And we're back. And this will be the conclusion of this first case. So, I'll sort of try to explain what I'm thinking, and probably I'm totally wrong. It sort of clinched on the notepad, and how the notepad was not only in the shack, but it was also more than likely held by Peter Carey, and also it was in his right hand, and also he had a knife, and also Nelligan said that he went into the shack to look for the papers, and he said that he couldn't find them. So that means that Nelligan had been in there, in the shack. However, the shack was locked after the murder, basically. So, well, after the body was found, at least. So, somehow the notepad ended up in the hands of Peter Carey, quite literally. And the way I think about it is, Nelligan was trying to sneak around, and then, actually, let's start off with the not guilty party, which is the harpooner man. I think he goes to Peter Carey to beg for money here and there, maybe, or they have some sort of relationship. He doesn't like Peter Carey, but he has to sort of go to him for cash, and maybe they even shared the money from stealing it from Nelligan the senior, because I would imagine that there's no reason for the harpooner Cairns to just let someone get away with murder for nothing, and he sort of he survives and manages to survive without without working. So he's sort of, getting money from somewhere, at least for the bare necessities, and then he arm wrestles and gambles his, whatever money he has left. Or arm wrestles for money and gambles, both at the same time, I guess. So that's what I think about him. So he went there for a visit, and he goes there for a visit here and there to get money from Peter Carey. So I think that's their relationship. They know each other, they see each other. It doesn't mean that they have to like each other, but they sort of, they have a history together. Now, Cairns also was very loose with his speech. So he told us something. He told us about the murder, and we just bought him like a couple of drinks, so he talks when he's drunk. So that's one way of someone finding information on Peter Carey. And I also think that Sherlock Holmes' brother has something to do with this. So when Nelligan said that he went to the hotel, or he said that he was at the hotel, that he lost the notebook at the hotel, I think he probably went to see Mycroft Holmes, who is Sherlock Holmes' brother, and Mycroft was giving him information, because Mycroft, I think, is trying to lure Sherlock into helping him at some point. Now, he hasn't been in the game yet, but he will be at the beginning of the next case. He will appear. About the notebook, I think it either there's a chance that Nelligan was, scrounging around, and I sort of do believe that he lost the notebook. So he could have been there sneaking around, and then Peter Carey found the notebook and was looking at it. And I think maybe he put one and one together. Also the torn pages on the logbook and the torn bond in the back. I'm not sure what that is, but there's a lot of holes in my reasoning. But and a lot of assumptions as well. But you have to make a choice, and so I thought that he knows that someone knows, maybe, or then he was in the process of asking what is this and what do you know, and that's why he had the knife, because he was sort of holding Nelligan in the shack, possibly, at least, because there's two possibilities. He either had the notebook in his hand and it fell down into the pool of blood, or Nelligan dropped it onto the pool of blood. However, it's sort of, I don't see how, it falls on the pool of blood afterwards. Because there's nothing there, because I think Nelligan was looking in the chest. He was looking in the check and he said that he couldn't find the bond. So he could be lying, of course, but sort of, this is my reasoning. And then he takes Peter Carey grabs him, and then there's commotion. And we also know that some way Hurtley can give letters to the missus without them actually seeing each other, because the wife said that she doesn't want to see him, so they have some sort of a way for secret correspondence in some way. So he was writing a letter at night when he was captured, so that would mean that he had some way of, because he could have gone home, written the letter and sent it, but he was there writing the letter, so that sort of means that he's writing a letter, and then he's about to, his plan was probably to leave the letter somewhere for the wife to find it, or jump over the wall and put it in some place where they sort of exchange their letters in, which could be the tool shack. So then there is one problem here, but I'll get to it. Hopefully I'll remember. But then he heard commotion, and he went in there, and then he saw Nelligan probably not fighting Carey, but sort of Carey with a knife, with the notebook. And then Hurtley killed Carey, basically. That's how I see this happening. Now the problem is that the blood doesn't trickle down onto the floor instantly. So there's a problem with them getting caught while there, but I would imagine that Nelligan sort of wanted to find the bonds, and then Hurtley possibly heard about that or something, and then he helped him find them, picked them up from the tin box, because he knows he's the gardener, so he knows some things. And then after that they both leave, but then because the problem is that there's no reason really to go back for the notepad unless you want to sort of hide it, but you already knew the cops had been there. So that sort of gives credence to Nelligan being innocent in a sense, but the notebook was in Peter Carey's hand, probably, or it fell onto the blood later on when they were sort of looking around for the bonds. And I guess they sort of deducted that it has to be in the tin box because the chest is empty, and I guess Carey doesn't have anything on him, and also the torn bond. I don't know if Carey was trying to hide things or not, but there's so many different versions of what could have happened, and I'm not going to spoil it. I'll come back to this once the game is over and see how wrong I was, because there's so many different ways this could have gone. and so many different ways to think about it. And so I think I might be, because the first time I was thinking it is Cairns the harpooner, because it was sort of, obvious. And then the problem with that is, because I wasn't really focusing, I was just, basically playing around, trying to learn the game. And then I didn't realize that I actually have to, stop and think, because the past couple of games have been sort of easier, and then the older Sherlock Holmes has always had like a conclusion, and then they wouldn't really let Sherlock be wrong. So in this game, I actually had to think, but then I just went on. I should have stopped there and reset everything. But then the notebook is something that, because Nelligan said that he went into the house or the shack, and he said that he didn't find the bonds. So it's likely that he didn't have enough time to really look for them. And then he also said something like, things are going to get worse if you find what the numbers are for in the notepad, then things are going to get worse. But I think that's because maybe he realized that maybe he was the one who took the logbook, and he ripped the pages out and found the bond in there too, and sort of he knows that people can put one and one together or something. But the list was given to him by the mother, I would imagine, unless he was lying, of course. And then it could be that the list was given by Mycroft as well, but he said that he'd been on the sort of case for months trying to track them down. And I don't know how Nelligan, because he's just a kid who doesn't have any money, how he's tracking things down. So I would imagine that's also why Mycroft is involved. But there's so many holes in this, but there's also holes in other theories. But what we do know for a fact is that Nelligan was in the shack at some point. Either he dropped the notepad down, so either he was in the shack after the murder on the same night, perhaps, or before the body was found, so that he dropped the notepad onto the pool of blood, and it hadn't dried out yet, so he was there pretty close after the incident, or he had been there before, but had lost the notebook there, and then Peter found it, and then he was raving about it with the notebook in hand. And I still think, as if Peter dropped it onto the pool of blood, then it doesn't, well, because I think if he dropped it on the ground as he was killed, the pool of blood would go around sort of the notebook and get, mixed up with the notebook and stuff. So the notebook could have been on the floor, dropped by him, but it sort of creates a problem where the notebook could not have, or it limits the sort of possibilities of how the notebook ended up in the pool of blood, because well, there's so much to go to, and I need to sort of carry this video on. So my thinking is that Hurtley had to kill him, because Nelligan couldn't do it alone. But then with the notebook there, and it being tied so closely to sort of the murder and everything, and Nelligan trying to go back, because he was trying to go, he doesn't need the notebook for anything except finding the bonds, but he knows where the bonds are. So either he was trying to go back into the house to get the bonds, which seems reasonable, or then he went back there to get the notebook. And because the police stopped him before he should have been let, like they should have let him go in there and then come out. And then depending on what Nelligan, if Nelligan had the notebook, he could have seen it on the ground, I guess, but it was dark. So there's so many things to sort of think about it here, and I've been sort of going through a lot of stuff, or a lot of this stuff, and just figuring out which is the most reasonable thing. So we know Nelligan couldn't really do it alone. We know that Hurtley could do it. He had a motive as well, in a sense, and he was still sending letters to the wife. We know that Cairns doesn't have money, because if he would have the bonds, he wouldn't be around anymore, probably. So he's out of the question. So it's one of them, and they're both caught, so we don't know what they would have done with the bonds, like, once they had it, because they both had motives to come back to the scene of the crime, even though they could have left. So with Hurtley, it was love, and with Nelligan, it was the bonds. And I'm not sure if Hurtley cared about the bonds at all, or even knew about it, really. It's all speculation, but I would imagine Hurtley killed Peter Carey, and then Nelligan was at least around the sort of murder scene, and he said he couldn't find the bonds. So it's possible Hurtley took the bonds because he knew sort of where they were, and then they just left after the whole thing happened, because we don't really know the details. But there is an option for two murderers. So Liam Hurtley and John Nelligan are guilty of a heinous premeditated crime. Now this is a problem, because I don't personally think that they sort of did this, but I think my sort of reasoning is completely based on basically like 99%, 98% guesswork. So I would imagine that Hurtley was the one who sort of escalated it, in a sense, because I don't think Peter Carey was a murderer, according to the harpooner, but we don't really know. So, well, I would imagine he is, unless Cairns is just, completely talking nonsense, which is also possible because he was drunk and stuff. But Hurtley was the initiator. Poor Nelligan was just following his lead. I think sort of this could be it, but then Nelligan is sort of playing the victim in a way. So I'm still torn between who actually did it, but we sort of know that Nelligan couldn't kill alone. Basically, that is, it's an unreasonable sort of assumption. So I don't know, there might be a possibility that Nelligan was actually the lead and Hurtley was pushed along or something. But then there is the option for Hurtley being guilty alone. And it says that he was clouded by his love for Judith Carey. This murder was a crime of passion under emotional duress. Nevertheless, he must answer to the law for what he has done. So, sort of, it would mean that Hurtley was guilty. And I don't know how much of this is sort of trying to lure us sort of into, like, give us the wrong impression, because there's so much stuff here that has nothing to do with what I'm thinking, basically. So it leads me to think that I'm completely wrong. But I think I would charge them both and then sort of let the police and the lawyers handle it. So that's what I'm going to do now. And Nelligan was the initiator and Hurtley was his accomplice. I don't believe that, and I don't believe this, but I have to make a decision. So I'm just gonna, because I feel like there was no premeditation here, in a sense. Like, things just, Peter Carey was sort of driving himself into this corner, basically, by having the bonds and then murdering someone and then treating people wrong and everything. So he was in a sense begging for it. Not that he deserved it in a sense, but he was asking for something bad to happen, some unlucky circumstances to befall him. So I do think Nelligan was following his lead, but it's only there's no evidence for this. It's actually the evidence points somewhere else or towards him being guilty. But I feel like I'm completely wrong, and I'm not fit to be Sherlock Holmes. But
the case is solved. I am now ready to present the guilty party.
So tell me, who killed Black Peter?
There are two culprits, Inspector, Nelligan and Hurtley.
What? Well, I would never have guessed, Mr. Holmes. They are a rotten pair, though.
It was a combination of two motives, culminating in one crime.
What were their motives?
The first was revenge. Black Peter possessed the bond certificates that had belonged to Nelligan's father, and young Nelligan wished to retrieve them.
And the second?
The second was a crime of passion. Liam Hurtley was in love with Black Peter's wife, and this caused a conflict between him and Carrie.
Well. Makes sense, Mr. Holmes.
I suggest that you organize a small confrontation between the two, just to confirm my accusations.
That's a good idea, Mr. Holmes. I'll talk to these fellows. Join me in the interrogation room. Gentlemen, we know everything about your association to kill Black Peter. Admit that you planned it together.
Our association? I don't even know this man.
You needed to kill Peter Carey. There had to be two of you there.
Ridiculous. I'm innocent.
All that remains is to determine the level of guilt. Which one of you is the initiator in this case?
But I just told you I've never seen this man before.
It's him. He's the culprit. He was forcing me. He threatened me. He's the mastermind behind it all.
Shut up. You're a lunatic.
Well, it all seems very clear, don't you think, Mr. Holmes?
Both are guilty, of course, but I believe that Hurtley was the initiator of the crime.
It's ridiculous. Why would I need the help of this weakling?
You wanted to be rid of the man who was terrorizing his wife, and who prevented the two of you from being together. Young Nelligan was just following his lead.
You are wrong. I have nothing whatsoever to do with this.
You'll explain that to the judge.
The case is resolved, Inspector. I shall return to Baker Street.
Very well, Mr. Holmes. Goodbye for now.
This trip to the countryside will be good for you, Holmes. As your friend and your doctor, I really do recommend that you give yourself a complete change of scene. Fresh air, brisk walks, bird watching, chopping wood.
Sounds intolerable. Certainly it sounds delightful.
But you haven't yet told me who your friend is, the one we're going to visit.
He is a bee lover.
A bee lover? Do you mean that he keeps bees? That must be Mrs. Hudson, bringing the warm cloth that I requested.
There is someone to see you, Mr. Holmes.
I have no time. Send whoever it is away.
Yes, Holmes, I really think we ought to leave now.
Mycroft.
Sherlock.
Oh, Mr. Holmes? Perhaps you don't remember me. I'm Dr. Watson. We met at the Diogenes Club a few years ago. I documented our encounter in a short story I gave the title The Greek Interpreter.
He does remember you, Watson. My brother remembers everything, and that is why he is so valuable to the government.
We're about to depart for the train station.
I know.
You know?
Sherlock, I need your help. There are people who presently threaten both our country and the Crown itself. You must help us with those methods of yours.
Need? Help? Those are not words I would readily associate with you, Mycroft.
I wrote you a letter, but you did not reply. And this is not about politics. It's about people. People similar to those whom you pretend to defend in your petty detective affairs.
Everything is about politics with you, Mycroft. I'm not interested. Have some of your agents, your spies, or worse, undertake this job of yours. You are defending your people, and they have little to do with the people I choose to help, I can assure you.
That's the point. You think exactly as they do.
Who are they?
The Merry Men. He is talking about the Merry Men, a band of idealistic terrorists.
Sherlock, do please think about it. They are planning something diabolical. Your country needs you.
You need me, Mycroft, and you are not the country, although if your waistline expands very much further.
Mrs. Hudson, tea will not be necessary. Dr. Watson, the train conductor, Mr. Parker, is aware that you will be 7 minutes late. You are in the 4th car. The train will be waiting for you. Sherlock, enjoy your time in Staffordshire. And do, please, at least write to me on your return.